Jake Morrison opened his eyes slowly. Pain shot through his head like lightning. The metal floor beneath him felt cold against his cheek. Everything around him looked strange and alien. Blue lights flickered on walls that seemed to curve in impossible ways. The air smelled different too, like copper mixed with something sweet. He tried to sit up, but his hands were locked in strange metal cuffs. The cuffs glowed with the same blue light as the walls. Jake looked around the small room he was trapped in. It was clearly a prison cell. 3 walls were solid metal, but the 4th wall was made of some kind of energy field that buzzed softly. Beyond that energy wall, he could see a corridor with more blue lights. Jake remembered bits and pieces of what happened. His small scout ship had been checking the outer edges of human space when the aliens attacked. Their weapons had cut through, his shields like paper. His ship had been destroyed in seconds. Somehow they had pulled him from the wreckage before it exploded. Now he was their prisoner. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Jake quickly lay back down and closed his eyes. He made his breathing slow and steady, like he was still unconscious. 3 figures stopped outside his cell. They were talking in a language that sounded like glass breaking mixed with wind chimes. Through his closed eyelids, Jake could sense bright lights scanning over him. One of the aliens was using some kind of medical device to examine him. The device hummed and beeped as it moved over his body. Jake fought the urge to flinch when the scanner passed over the scars on his back and the metal implants at the base of his skull. The aliens talked for a few more minutes, then walked away. Their footsteps faded into silence. Jake waited another 10 minutes before opening his eyes again. He needed to understand where he was and who had captured him. From what he could see through the energy barrier, this was definitely an alien ship. The walls had that curved organic look that he had seen in intelligence reports about the Zephyrians. The Zephyrians were a warrior race that looked like walking crystals. They had been raiding human colonies for months now. Their technology was advanced, but they seemed to think humans were primitive and weak. Jake almost smiled at that thought. If only they knew what they had really captured. He was not just any human soldier. He was Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Force. More importantly, he was bonded to the UHS Retribution, one of humanity's most powerful warships. The ship was currently drifting in space 3 light-years away, waiting for his signal. The Retribution looked like an old derelict ship to anyone scanning it. Its true power was hidden behind layers of stealth technology and dormant systems. The ship was 3 kilometers long and packed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But without Jake's neural connection, it would remain sleeping. Jake tested the metal cuffs around his wrists. They were locked tight, but he was not trying to break them. Not yet. First, he needed to learn more about his captors and their ship. The metal implants in his skull were already reaching out, trying to connect with the ship's computer systems. The process was slow and careful. If the aliens detected what he was doing, his mission would fail before it started. More footsteps approached his cell. This time only one alien came to visit him. It was taller than the others and wore what looked like a military uniform. Crystalline plates covered its body like natural armor. Its face was angular and sharp, with eyes that glowed like blue fire. This had to be their commander. The alien pressed something on the wall, and the energy barrier disappeared. It stepped into the cell and looked down at Jake with obvious contempt. When it spoke, a device on its chest translated the words into human language. "So you are awake, human creature," the alien commander said. "I am War Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Fleet. You are now a prisoner aboard my ship, the Silent Tide." Jake sat up slowly and tried to look confused and frightened. "Where am I? What happened to my ship?" Kethvar laughed, a sound like crystals clinking together. "Your pathetic little vessel was destroyed. You should be grateful we bothered to save your worthless life. You will be studied and then transported to our homeworld as a specimen." "Specimen?" Jake let his voice shake with fear. "Yes, human. Your species' interests are scientists. We have captured many of your kind from the colonies we have conquered. You're all so weak and primitive. It amazes us that you ever managed to leave your birth planet. Jake bit back the angry words that wanted to pour out of his mouth. Instead, he played his part perfectly. Please, I don't want to die. I'll tell you anything you want to know about humans. Of course you will, Kethvar said with another crystal laugh. They all do eventually. But first you will rest and recover your strength. Dead specimens are less useful than living ones. The War Admiral turned to leave but stopped at the cell entrance. Do not attempt to escape, human. This ship carries 46 other vessels in our fleet. Even if you somehow manage to get free, you would die in the void of space long before reaching any human world. After Kethvar left and the energy barrier reappeared, Jake allowed himself a small smile. 47 ships total. That was good intelligence. The Retribution could handle those numbers easily once it was fully awakened. Jake spent the next few hours mapping the ship through his enhanced senses. His neural implants were slowly making connections with the Zephyrian computer network. The process had to be done carefully to avoid detection. Each new connection gave him more information about the ship and its crew. The Silent Tide was a heavy cruiser with a crew of 300 aliens. It was armed with plasma weapons and protected by energy shields. To most enemies, it would be a formidable opponent. To the Retribution, it would be nothing more than target practice. As the ship's day cycle ended and the lights dimmed, Jake began the slow process of preparing for what was to come. The aliens thought they had captured a helpless human prisoner. Soon they would learn the truth. Soon they would discover that some humans were bonded to ships that could tear apart entire fleets. Soon the sleeping warship would awake. 3 days passed while Jake played the role of a broken prisoner. Every morning the same young Zephyrian engineer brought him food and water. The alien's name was Silthek, and he was different from the others. Where most Zephyrians treated Jake like an animal, Silthek showed him kindness. You look tired, human, Silthek said as he pushed a food tray through a slot in the energy barrier. Are you sleeping well? Jake looked up with what he hoped appeared to be gratitude. Thank you for asking. The lights never turn off completely, so it's hard to rest. Silthek glanced around nervously, then adjusted something on his belt device. The bright blue lights in the cell dimmed to a soft glow. Better? Much better, Jake said. Why are you being kind to me? The others treat me like I'm not even alive. The young engineer sat down on the floor outside the cell. Not all of us agree with this war against your people. Some of us think the War Admiral is making a mistake. What kind of mistake? Jake asked, genuinely curious. Your species is not as primitive as our leaders believe, Silthek said quietly. I have studied the technology we captured from your colonies. Much of it is more advanced than we first thought. I fear we may be waking something dangerous. Jake nodded slowly. What do you mean by dangerous? There are old stories among my people, Silthek said. Stories about races that seemed weak but had hidden strength. Races that fought back when pushed too far. I think humans might be one of those races. Before Jake could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Silthek quickly stood up and adjusted his belt device. The lights returned to their normal brightness. A female Zephyrian approached carrying what looked like medical equipment. Engineer Silthek, you are not authorized to speak with the specimen, the female said in a sharp voice. My apologies, Dr. Veltara. I was just delivering the food as ordered. Dr. Veltara waved him away with one crystal in hand. Return to your duties. I need to examine the human. After Silthek left, the doctor activated her medical scanner and began running it over Jake's body. She moved the device slowly and carefully, paying special attention to his head and spine. Her blue eyes glowed brighter as she studied the readings. Fascinating, she muttered. Your neural pathways are unlike anything in our databases. These implants in your skull are far more sophisticated than we initially believed. Jake tried to look confused. I don't understand what you're talking about. Of course you don't, Dr. Veltara said with contempt. Your primitive mind could not comprehend the complexity of your own biology. These modifications were clearly done by a more advanced species. Modifications? Jake asked. Your brain has been altered, human. Cybernetic implants have been grafted to your nervous system. The scarring on your spine indicates major surgical procedures. Someone or something has changed you from your natural state. Dr. Veltara continued her scans for another hour. With each passing minute, she seemed to grow more excited. Finally, she packed up her equipment and prepared to leave. War Admiral, Cathavar was right to keep you intact, she said. You may be the key to understanding how your species has survived as long as it has. I will recommend that we begin more detailed examinations immediately. After she left, Jake allowed himself a moment of concern. If the doctor started doing invasive tests, she might discover exactly what his implants were designed to do. He needed to speed up his timeline. That night, while the ship's crew slept, Jake began the delicate process of hacking deeper into their computer systems. His neural implants worked like invisible fingers, reaching through the ship's network and gathering information. He learned about their weapons, their shields, their crew numbers, and most importantly, their destination. The Zephyrian fleet was heading toward New Haven, one of humanity's core colony worlds. According to their battle plans, they expected to arrive in 4 days. They intended to attack the planet with overwhelming force and enslave the entire population. War Admiral Cathavar believed it would be an easy victory that would break human resistance once and for all. Jake almost laughed at their arrogance. New Haven was heavily fortified with the latest human defense systems. The Zephyrians were flying into a trap and they had no idea. But Jake could not let them reach the colony at all. Too many innocent people would die even if New Haven's defenses held. The next morning brought disturbing news. Jake overheard 2 guards talking about recent raids on human settlements. They bragged about how easy it was to capture human civilians. They laughed about families being separated and sent to different slave camps. They described the fear in human eyes when Zephyrian ships appeared in their skies. Jake's hands clenched into fists as he listened. Every word made his anger burn hotter. These aliens had no idea what they had unleashed. They thought humans were weak prey animals that could be hunted without consequence. Soon they would learn the truth about human nature. When Silthek brought his afternoon meal, Jake decided to test the young engineer's convictions. Silthek, can I ask you something? Jake said. What is it, human? Do you think it's right to attack people who cannot defend themselves? To take children from their families and sell them as slaves? Silthek's crystalline face showed obvious discomfort. War is never pleasant, human. But the strong have always ruled the weak. It is the way of the universe. Is it? Jake asked, quietly. Or is it just the way of bullies and cowards who pick on those they think cannot fight back? You speak strangely for a prisoner, Silthek said. Most humans we capture just beg for their lives. Maybe you haven't captured the right kind of human yet, Jake said with a small smile. That evening, Dr. Veltara returned with more medical equipment. She seemed excited about something as she set up her devices outside Jake's cell. I have received permission from War Admiral Cathavar to begin Phase 2 of your examination, she announced. These procedures may cause you some discomfort, but the scientific knowledge we gain will be invaluable. Jake looked at her equipment and recognized several items that would be used for brain surgery. His time was running out. Soon, he would have to reveal his true nature whether he was ready or not. But first he needed to send a very special message across the void of space to a sleeping ship that had been waiting patiently for his call. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Haven system. 47 warships appeared in space like predators surrounding their prey. War Admiral Cathavar stood on the bridge of the Silent Tide and smiled as he looked at the human colony world spinning slowly in the distance. Begin the attack, he commanded. Show these humans the price of resistance. But as the fleet moved toward New Haven, their sensors began picking up readings that made no sense. The planet was surrounded by defense platforms that should not exist. Energy signatures indicated weapons far more advanced than anything in Zephyrian intelligence reports. Massive shield generators protected the entire world in a bubble of crackling energy. What is this? Cathavar demanded. Our information said this world had minimal defenses. His tactical officer studied the sensor displays with growing alarm. Sir, I am detecting over 200 defense platforms. Each one appears to be armed with weapons that match or exceed our own firepower. There are also signs of a large fleet, hiding behind the planet's moon. Kethavar's crystalline face darkened with anger. Impossible. Human technology is primitive. These readings must be wrong. Sir, I have triple-checked all systems. The readings are accurate. This world is heavily fortified. Down in his prison cell, Jake felt the ship slow as it approached New Haven. Through his neural connection to the ship's systems, he could see what the Zephyrians were seeing. He smiled with fierce pride as he watched his people's defenses come online. The aliens had walked into a trap and they still didn't understand what they were facing. But Jake could not wait for the battle to begin. Too many humans would die even if New Haven's defenses held. It was time to end this war before it could truly start. Jake closed his eyes and reached out with his mind across 3 light-years of empty space. The signal he sent looked like random, static to any Zephyrian sensors, but encoded within that static was a very specific message written in quantum frequencies that only one receiver in the galaxy could understand. The message was simple but powerful. It was time to wake up. 3 light-years away in the cold emptiness of space, the UHS Retribution received Jake's signal. The massive ship had been drifting in powered down mode for days, looking like nothing, more than an ancient derelict to any passing vessels. But now Jake's awakening command flowed through every circuit and system on the ship. Deep in the Retribution's core, fusion reactors that had been sleeping began to ignite. Plasma flowed through conduits like liquid fire, bringing power to systems that had been dormant. The ship's artificial intelligence, a sophisticated consciousness known as Area, began the complex process of awakening. Command signal received and verified. Area announced to the empty bridge. Commander Morrison is requesting immediate assistance, preparing for combat operations. Weapon systems that had been powered down for weeks began their activation sequences. Plasma cannons capable of destroying entire cities charged with deadly energy. Missile tubes loaded with quantum warheads that could crack planets. Point defense systems that could track and destroy thousands of targets simultaneously came online. The Retribution's quantum drive began spinning up for an impossible jump across interstellar space. Normal ships required hours or days to travel. Between star systems, the Retribution could fold space itself and appear anywhere in the galaxy within minutes. Back on the silent tide, Jake felt the change immediately. His neural implants began glowing with faint blue light as they established connection with his ship. The metal cuffs around his wrists suddenly felt as breakable as paper. The energy barrier holding him prisoner was now under his control. But Jake did not break free yet. First, he wanted to see how the Zephyrians would react when they realized their intelligence about humans was completely wrong. On the bridge, War Admiral Kethvar was arguing with his officers about whether to attack or retreat. The human defenses were far stronger than expected, but Zephyrian pride demanded that they not back down from a fight. "We have 47 ships," Kethvar declared. "No human world can stand against such force. Prepare for full assault." "Sir," his tactical officer said nervously, "perhaps we should request reinforcements before attacking. The human defenses appear to be more advanced than our intelligence indicated." "Are you questioning my judgment?" Kethvar demanded. "No, sir, but—" The officer never finished his sentence. Space itself began to tear open 3,000 kilometers off their starboard bow. Reality split apart like fabric being ripped by invisible hands. Exotic energy poured through the gap in space-time, creating a light show that temporarily blinded every sensor in the Zephyrian fleet. When the energy storm cleared, the UHS Retribution hung in space like a monument to human engineering. 3 kilometers of death and destruction wrapped in armor plating that seemed to absorb light itself. The ship bristled with weapons that bent the laws of physics. Its very presence caused electromagnetic interference across the entire Zephyrian fleet. "What is that thing?" someone whispered on the bridge. War Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical displays in growing horror. The massive vessel that had just appeared was unlike anything in Zephyrian databases. Its energy signatures were off the charts. Its armor was made from materials that their sensors could not identify. Its weapons were already tracking every ship in his fleet. "Where did it come from?" Kethvar demanded. "Unknown, sir. It just appeared out of nowhere. Our sensors detected no approach vector. Down in his cell, Jake stood up slowly. The frightened, captive facade fell away like a discarded mask. His eyes now glowed with the same blue light as his neural implants. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Aria, this is Commander Morrison. Status report." His words were transmitted directly through his neural link, but they also came out of the ship's communication system, loud enough for everyone on the Silent Tide to hear. In the corridor outside his cell, Dr. Veltara dropped her medical equipment, in shock. "All systems are online and ready, Commander," Aria's voice replied through every speaker on the Zephyrian ship. "I count 47 enemy vessels. Shall I begin target acquisition?" Jake smiled coldly as alarms began blaring throughout the Silent Tide. Zephyrian crew members were running in panic as they realized their primitive prisoner was somehow connected to the massive warship that had just appeared. "Negative, Aria. Wait for my command. I want them to understand what they're facing first." War Admiral Kethvar burst into the detention area with 6 armed guards. He stared at Jake in disbelief as the human stood calmly in his cell with metal implants glowing like stars. "What are you?" Kethvar demanded. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Force," Jake replied. "And you have made a terrible mistake." The space around New Haven erupted into chaos as the UHS Retribution began its attack. Plasma cannons that fired miniature stars cut through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. The first enemy cruiser exploded in a ball of white fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. The second ship lasted only moments longer before quantum torpedoes phased through its armor and detonated inside the hull. War Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as his proud fleet was torn apart by a single human vessel. His tactical displays showed impossible readings. The human ship was moving at speeds that should have torn it apart. Its weapons were hitting targets on the other side of the battlefield with perfect accuracy. Its armor was regenerating damage faster than his ships could inflict it. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel," Kethvar commanded through his communication system. 45 Zephyrian warships turned their weapons toward the Retribution and fired everything they had. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and fusion missiles all struck the human ship at the same time. The explosion was so bright it temporarily overloaded every sensor in the system. When the energy cleared, the Retribution hung in space completely undamaged. Its armor plating seemed to drink in the energy from the Zephyrian weapons and grow stronger. Then the human ship began firing back with twice the power it had been hit with. Down in his cell on the Silent Tide, Jake stood perfectly still as data flowed through his neural connection. He could see every enemy ship, track every missile, calculate every trajectory. His consciousness was spread across 3 kilometers of warship, controlling weapons and defenses with the precision of thought itself. Dr. Veltara rushed into the detention area just as another Zephyrian cruiser exploded on the tactical displays. She stared at Jake in amazement and terror. The human's neural implants were now glowing so brightly they cast blue shadows on the walls. His eyes had become points of light that seemed to look right through her. "What are you?" she whispered. Jake turned to look at her and she stepped back involuntarily. There was something terrifying about his gaze, like looking into the heart of a star. "I am what happens when humans stop pretending to be helpless," Jake said calmly. "Your people made the mistake of thinking we were prey animals. Now you get to learn what human predators look like." "This is impossible," Dr. Veltara said, her voice shaking. "No single being can control a ship that large. The neural pathways required would destroy any organic brain." "Human brains are more adaptable than you thought," Jake replied. "We don't just build ships, Doctor. We bond with them. We become part of them. The Retribution is not just my vessel. It is my body, my weapon, my will made manifest in steel and fire." On the bridge, War Admiral Kethvar was screaming orders that no one could follow. Half his fleet was already destroyed, and the human ship showed no signs of slowing down. Every weapon his forces fired was intercepted by point defense systems that moved faster than thought. Every attack was countered before it could begin. "How are they predicting our movements?" his tactical officer asked in despair. "They are not predicting," Jake's voice said through the communication system. I am reading your thoughts through your ship's computer systems. I know what you are going to do before you do it. HFY spun around and ran back toward the detention area. He found Jake standing calmly in his cell while explosions lit up the space outside. The energy barrier was still active, but somehow it no longer seemed to be containing the human. "Stop this attack," HFY demanded. "We surrender." "Do you?" Jake asked with cold amusement. "Your ships are still firing on mine. All ships, cease. Fire immediately," HFY commanded over his communication system. "Too late," Jake said. "You came to New Haven planning to enslave innocent people. You bragged about attacking defenseless colonies. You laughed about separating families and selling children. Did you think there would be no consequences for such actions?" Another explosion shook the silent tide as a nearby Zephyrian destroyer was cut in half by a plasma beam. Jake didn't even blink as the shockwave rattled the ship around him. Young Silthek appeared at the entrance to the detention area. His crystalline face showed pure terror as he watched the battle through the viewport. "Commander Morrison, please. Many of us never wanted this war." Jake's expression softened slightly as he looked at the young engineer. "I know, Silthek. That is why some of you will survive this day, but your war admiral and his supporters will not. You cannot destroy an entire fleet," Dr. Veltara protested. "It would be genocide." "Would it?" Jake asked. "Your fleet came here to commit genocide against my people. I am simply returning the favor. The only difference is that I have the power to actually do it." Through his neural link, Jake guided the Retribution through a complex series of maneuvers that brought it within point-blank range of 3 enemy cruisers. The ship's main batteries fired simultaneously, creating a chain reaction that destroyed all 3 vessels in a single coordinated strike. "Please," Silthek begged. "There has to be another way." Jake studied the young Zephyrian's face for a long moment. There was genuine fear there, but also genuine regret for what his people had done. Finally, Jake nodded. "There is another way, Silthek. But it requires your people to make a choice. They can continue fighting and die like warriors, or they can surrender completely and live to learn from their mistakes." "What would surrender mean?" HFY asked through gritted teeth. "Full withdrawal from human space," Jake replied. "Release of all human prisoners. Reparations for the colonies you have destroyed. And a formal acknowledgement that humanity is not to be underestimated again." "And if we refuse?" Jake's smile was colder than the vacuum of space. "Then in 5 minutes, there will be no Zephyrian fleet left to refuse anything." War Admiral HFY looked at his tactical displays. 28 of his ships had already been destroyed. The remaining vessels were badly damaged and their crews were in full panic. The human warship continued to move through his fleet like death itself, untouchable and unstoppable. "All ships," HFY said quietly into his communication system. "Stand down weapons and prepare to surrender." "A wise choice," Jake said. "But the decision is not yours alone to make. Each ship must choose for itself. Those that surrender will be spared. Those that continue fighting will be destroyed." Through the Retribution sensors, Jake watched as 17 more Zephyrian vessels powered down their weapons and began transmitting surrender signals. But 2 ships at the edge of the formation tried to escape by jumping to faster-than-light travel. Jake reached out through space with his consciousness and touched their navigation systems. Both ships fell out of their jump attempts and tumbled, helplessly in the void. A moment later, quantum torpedoes ended their existence. "Let that be a lesson," Jake announced to the surviving Zephyrians. "There is no escape from the consequences of your actions. Humanity remembers every wrong done to us, and we have very long memories indeed." The battlefield fell silent except for the crackling of debris and the soft hum of the Retribution's engines. 17 Zephyrian ships remained out of the original 47. They hung in space like broken toys, their crews too terrified to move. The massive human warship drifted among them like a predator deciding which prey to take next. On the silent tide, War Admiral HFY stood in Jake's detention area with his shoulders slumped in defeat. His crystalline armor was cracked from stress and his glowing eyes had dimmed to barely visible sparks. Everything he had believed about Zephyrian superiority had been shattered in less than an hour. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did we not know? About ships like yours?" Jake stepped forward, and the energy barrier simply vanished at his approach. The metal cuffs around his wrists fell to the floor with a soft clank. He was no longer a prisoner, and everyone in the room knew it. "You knew," Jake said calmly. "Your own people tried to warn you. Silthek told you that humans might be more dangerous than you thought. Your intelligence officers reported that human technology was advancing faster than expected, but you ignored them because your pride would not let you believe that a species you considered primitive could threaten you." Dr. Veltara stepped forward with her hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Commander Morrison, I formally request that scientific cooperation replace military conflict. Your neural bonding technology could revolutionize how both our species understand consciousness itself." "Could it?" Jake asked with a slight smile. "And what makes you think humanity wants to share our secrets with a species that enslaves children?" "We did not know," Dr. Veltara said desperately. "We believed humans were non-sentient creatures. If we had understood your true intelligence, we never would have." "You would have found another excuse," Jake interrupted. "Predator species always do. You told yourselves we were primitive so you could justify taking what you wanted. But the truth is you attacked us because you thought we were weak, not because you thought we were stupid." Through his neural link, Jake received a priority communication from the Retribution's AI. Arya had been monitoring Zephyrian military networks and had disturbing news to report. "Commander, I am detecting 3 additional Zephyrian fleets moving toward human space. They appear to be responding to War Admiral Kethvar's distress calls. Total enemy force is estimated at 190 ships." Jake's expression did not change, but everyone in the room felt the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. "How long until they arrive, Arya?" 18 hours at current speed," the AI replied through the ship's speakers. War Admiral Kethvar's eyes widened with desperate hope. "You cannot fight 3 full fleets with 1 ship, human. No matter how advanced your technology, the numbers are against you." "Are they?" Jake asked with genuine curiosity. "Arya, please inform the War Admiral how many ships like the Retribution exist in human space." "Current active roster shows 43 Dreadnought-class vessels with bonded commanders," Arya replied. "Additionally, there are 12 Titan-class vessels and over 300 standard warships available for immediate deployment." The hope drained from Kethavar's face like water from a broken cup. Siltek made a soft sound of despair, and Dr. Veltara sat down heavily on the floor. 43 ships like this one, Kethvar whispered. "We never stood a chance." "No, you did not," Jake agreed, "but you still have a choice to make. You can order those 3 fleets to turn around and go home. You can end this war before more of your people die, or you can let your pride destroy the Zephyrian military completely." "Why would you spare us?" Dr. Veltara asked. "We have committed terrible crimes against your people." "Because Silthek was right," Jake said, looking at the young engineer. "Some of your people are not evil, just misguided. And because exterminating entire species is what monsters do. Humans may be predators, but we are not monsters." Jake activated his communication link to address all the surviving Zephyrian ships simultaneously. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Force. Your fleet has been defeated, and your War Admiral has surrendered. You now have a choice to make. You can return to your homeworld and tell your leaders that humanity is not prey. You can work to free the human slaves in your territory. You can choose to be better than the monsters who started this war. Or you can continue fighting and discover just how many ships like mine exist." Most of the Zephyrian vessels immediately began broadcasting surrender signals, but 3 ships at the edge of the formation powered up their weapons and prepared for a final attack. Jake sighed sadly. Some people have to learn lessons the hard way. The Retribution moved faster than thought itself. Plasma beams reached across space and the 3 defiant ships simply ceased to exist. The explosions were brief and bright, then nothing remained but expanding clouds of glowing gas. "The war is over," Jake announced. Any Zephyrian who wishes to continue fighting may do so, but they will face not just my ship, but the full might of humanity awakened to anger. We are no longer hiding our true capabilities. The galaxy will know what we are capable of when properly motivated. War Admiral Kethavar activated his personal communicator and sent a priority message to the approaching Zephyrian fleets. All Zephyrian forces, this is War Admiral Kethavar. Cease all military operations against human targets immediately. Return to base and await new orders. The war is over. Over the next hour, Jake supervised the transfer of human prisoners from the Zephyrian ships. Nearly 400 humans who had been captured during the raids were freed and transported to safety. Many were in poor condition from their captivity, but they were alive. Dr. Veltara approached Jake one final time before the Zephyrian ships departed. Commander Morrison, I have studied your neural implants and I believe I understand now. You do not control your ship. You become your ship. The boundary between biological consciousness and artificial intelligence has been completely dissolved. That is correct, Jake confirmed. Human dreadnought commanders sacrifice their individual existence to become something greater. We are no longer entirely human, but we are not machines either. We are something new. And there are 42 others like you? 42 others who made the same choice I did, Jake corrected. Each of us bonded to a ship capable of destroying entire fleets. Each of us waiting patiently for threats to humanity to reveal themselves. Silthek stepped forward with obvious nervousness. Commander Morrison, may I ask what will happen to those of us who opposed this war from the beginning? Jake smiled, and for the first time it was genuinely warm. You will go home, Silthek. You will tell your people what you have seen here. You will help them understand that the universe is full of species that seem weak until they are pushed too far. And maybe, if you are very fortunate, you will help prevent future wars before they can begin. As the surviving Zephyrian ships limped away toward their home territory, Jake remained connected to the Retribution. The massive warship would escort them partway to ensure they kept their word about ending hostilities. The UHS Retribution had awakened from its slumber to defend humanity. Now the entire galaxy would know that Earth's children were no longer hiding their true strength. The age of easy conquest was over, and a new balance of power had been established among the stars. Jake Morrison, no longer fully human but still devoted to protecting humanity, guided his ship into the darkness between worlds. There would be other threats to face, other predators who mistook human kindness for weakness. When they revealed themselves, they would discover that humanity's warships were never truly sleeping, and their commanders were never truly prisoners.